All right, welcome everyone, and I want to thank you all for coming today. Today we celebrate moms and mentors. I am nobody's mom, but I have been mentored by great women, and I've tried to pay that forward with women I've worked with over the years. I was the first woman in news at the Staten Island Advance in New York City when I walked in May 1975. We had women in the newsroom. Thank you. We had women in the newsroom, but they were relegated to the women's section or the style section. But one of these women, Elaine Boyes, took me under her wing and navigated me through many crucial situations that had absolutely nothing to do with journalism, but everything to do with being a woman in a business dominated by men. Women helping women remains crucial 50 years later, and will probably be crucial 50 years from now. So I'm happy to see that some of you have brought guests with you today. A big part of mentoring is giving women something to shoot for. If you can see it, you can be it is not a meme, it's a reality. And there are still plenty of industries where women are underrepresented. Technology, airline pilots, C-suite, chefs, and elected government. This year in Columbia, 14.7% of the legislators are women, while the state's adult population is 51.4% female. Back in March, we talked about the importance of women in legislative bodies, and now on the global stage, many countries you may not think of as especially advanced, Nicaragua, Cuba, Mexico, Rwanda, and the United Arab Emirates, have legislatures with more than 50% women. Senior was surprised by that when I said it back in March too. Contrast that with the percentage of women in the US Congress, which is roughly 25%. Changing this dynamic is our mission as Democratic women. Our featured speaker, Tameika Isaac Devine, Tameika Isaac Devine, knows these dynamics well. She's a mom and a mentor and a groundbreaking legislator who broke through her city's glass ceiling. We'll be hearing from her shortly. And how will we do that? How will we change this dynamic? By educating and engaging women, motivating them to see elections not as a political exercise, but as an exercise of their values. And by working hard for the election of our Democratic candidates, including financial support to the degree which this organization will support it. As I warned you all when I first stood at this podium in January, you did not elect someone comfortable with the status quo. I believe in advocacy and activism, in transparency and openness. And I believe that this is your organization. Although I am not required by anything in our bylaws to explain our finances to you, I believe it's important that I do so. So, we've been working very hard on a budget. Thank you. Big shout out to Valerie Brooks. I don't know where she is, but big shout out for that. It's been a lot of work. This budget is geared to us having the funds we need to make more significant contributions to our candidates, to increase our visibility in the county, build our membership, and expand our diversity to include younger members. To do that, we have to make some changes. Our biggest expense is the luncheons. It's not really a surprise to anybody. We lose, I say yes, lose, roughly $170 each month on these luncheons. We lose roughly $170 each month on the lunches. We are being very judicious in our food purchases, which is why we stopped taking reservations on Wednesday, so we can guarantee an accurate number to the caterer, not give them an overinflated guesstimate. Food is not the issue. We pay $300 per month for this room. And before you get all worked up about that, this is a bargain. When we used to meet at the West End Development Center, Community Center rather, it was $600. And if you had one person walk in over the number that you said you were going to have, they charged you, Peggy would know for sure, but I think it's $100 or $150 more. So previous boards have extensively investigated other locations, which is how they found the Croc Center. And less expensive alternatives like conference rooms that might be at the library or other locations are fine, but in many cases, they do not allow you to bring food or beverages. So that kind of takes the social atmosphere out of our lunches. So we are here, and frankly, we're lucky to be here. But obviously, we cannot continue to lose money. To address that, the board has approved 2 changes. Going back to the pre-pandemic days, we requested that people who attended but were not eating voluntarily donate $5. Effective next month, that's going to be a requirement. It will be collected via online payment when you register, or for those who refuse to use PayPal, bring it with you by check, preferably. We have 20 non-eaters roughly each month. So that change will bring in about $100 a month toward the room fee. Also effective next month, I'm ready for the groaning. We will be raising the price of lunch to $25. Oh yeah, yay. I like that. Whoever said yay, I'm with you. With an average of about 45 people eating each month, this will bring in another $225. So those 2 changes will cover the cost of the room and take us from losing money to making about $150 more a month. This directly will go to enabling us to provide more to candidates, more support for the party, more help to important upstate organizations whose values we share, and other affiliated Democratic organizations like the Young Dems and the Black Caucus. None of that is going to my salary. We're also going to start planning more fundraisers, starting with our first one, which is Sunday, May 21st. It's going to be a garden party with a mission. It's going to be in Linda Director's beautiful home. There'll be music, hors d'oeuvres, cocktails, conversation, and we're all very excited about that. If you have not yet registered, ticket sales are open until noon on Friday. The link has been scrolling across the screen while the slideshow has been on, and I'll also be sending it out. You've gotten a couple of emails about it in the past, but I'll send it out in my post-lunch email again. So please join us. It's also going to be a membership event. So people who, if you have friends who might want to join Democratic Women, please bring them. If they do sign up at the event itself, their ticket price will cover their dues for the remainder of this year. Okay, the board has also voted on a change for membership next year that we will put to a vote before the membership, which is required in our bylaws. It's not completely decided yet, but our proposal is to institute tiered membership. So you'll be able to sign up or renew at the same $25 you're paying now, but there'll be 2 other levels. As yet, we haven't decided what they'll be for those who feel comfortable paying more. There won't be any benefit for you to pay more. I love you guys, I really do. It will be instead a measure of each individual's personal decision and commitment. There will also be no public recognition or shaming. You will not have a gold, silver, or bronze badge, so we'll all know what you paid. We hope that those of you who can participate at a higher level will feel that DWGC is important enough to do so. There'll be more about this as we develop the program detail. If you would like to see an overview of the budget, email me and I will send you a copy. Now that we have that out of the way, I talked before about elections being a statement of our values. Many organizations we all support and work with, Planned Parenthood, REN, the ACLU, are critically important to advocating and fighting for issues. One such organization is Moms Demand Action. About a month from now, we'll be commemorating lives lost to gun violence in the upstate and gathering to show support for common sense gun violence prevention restrictions. That's Wear Orange Weekend on June 2nd through 4th. And while we have been focused on reproductive justice and LGBTQ rights and education in this current legislative session, draconian gun legislation, more of it, is nearing approval. I've asked Dorothy Duncan, the local lead for the South Greenville Moms Demand chapter and co-lead of the Gun Sense Action Network National Volunteer Outreach Team, which is quite a mouthful, to bring us up to date on this for a few minutes. You may have questions after Dorothy is done, but in the interest of time, please hold them until the meeting is over. Any questions that if Dorothy isn't here or you don't get your question answered and you send it to me, I promise you I will ask Dorothy to respond to it and get that answer back to you. Dorothy, welcome.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay in the back? Good. Laura, I promised her I would keep this to 3 minutes. Not sure that's possible. I could talk for an hour, but I'm going to do my best here. How many of you have heard of Moms Demand Action? You know, I'm hoping everybody else. Yes, we're the red shirts that show up. And we wish we didn't have to do this, but we do. And right now, what we're doing in South Carolina, we have been fighting constitutional carry, which that's what it's referred to. It's Senate Bill 109 right now. I call it open permitless carry, which is what it is. So just a real brief view, there's they're decreasing the age from 21 to 18 to be able to buy guns, getting rid of all training requirements, and no permits, no background checks. Background checks, depending on, how it's sold, whatever. So in lieu of everything else that's going on in this country with gun violence, and I know we're not even going to talk about that because y'all know how bad it is. Our state legislature is actually enacting worse gun laws instead of stronger, like many states are doing. So that's very upsetting. The House bill passed in 2 days and skipped the regular process. Senator Allen's here. I know I'm going to try to be good and not get into that, but there's a way you're supposed to do this and it doesn't always happen. So right now, this bill is in the Judiciary Committee. It got referred back to the subcommittee. We have 2 days left. Every day I'm like, please, 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 one more day, and we can make it through this session. We're hoping that it doesn't get through and back to Judiciary Committee. And I've been checking the agenda every day. I haven't done it today yet, but as of the other day, as of Thursday, Friday, it wasn't on there. So we're hoping it does not get passed in this session. That just means we need everybody still to please call the members of the Judiciary Committee. It's really easy to figure out who they are. You just go on the State House website. You can look at Senate, this committee, you pull up the names on the Judiciary Committee, and you just click on each one of those buttons and their phone numbers. Everything's there for contact information. So it's very easy to find. So that's number one. Call, please call. Even though we're almost done, we need to let these people know how we feel because they're not voting how the majority of people in South Carolina. And a lot of people aren't even aware of this bill. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, there's a Mother's Day campaign that's going on throughout the country. We're not doing anything here because it also happens to be the weekend for Artisphere. And we only had about 2 weeks notice that this was coming out, and you'll understand why. It is basically asking to call your United States legislators to ask them to please ban assault weapons. That's the one thing that I think almost everybody should agree on. Unfortunately, our legislators brag about the fact that they carry them and they're in their cars. So, but still, please call. And that's just during the weekend sometime. You can leave a message, you can call this week coming up to it, but we really would appreciate it if you do that. Where Orange event is coming up, as Laura mentioned, and we've got a flyer that we're going to give to you to send out with the email, so that'll have information. Please RSVP for those events. We have 2 events. One is on Friday night. We're going to gather in Falls Park on the bridge and just be there, show of solidarity, no speakers because we need permits and everything else for that. And it's very pricey to do that. And the second event is on Saturday. We're going to do a walk. If you can't do the walk, then we're going to meet at Phyllis Wheatley Community Center from 1:30 to 3:30 with speakers and survivor stories, which are very impactful and meaningful. So if as many of you can come, that's great. We'd really appreciate it if you RSVP so we know how many to expect. And the fourth thing I want to talk about real quickly, because Laura was like, what can we do? What can this group do to help us? We have something that's called Gun Sense Candidates. So as we're looking for elections, we need to start planning now. We need to get good candidates that we can support. People can fill out that Gun Sense questionnaire. By doing that, then moms groups can work for them with that campaign if they're Gun Sense candidates. We're technically a nonpartisan group, but we can support Gun Sense candidates in their work, which is really a big deal, you know, when you need phone banking, canvassing, all of that stuff. So that's it. I want to go to the elections this year and actually have somebody else to vote for. Thank you.
Yeah,
You can see.
yeah, and John is tall. So much of our efforts are directed toward getting candidates elected. That's our primary goal. And we have a candidate, a future candidate, not running this year, but running in 24, John MacCarthy, running for District 27. And he's going to speak to us for a few minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can you all hear me? Good deal. Okay. Well, I want to thank you all for having me here today. My name is John MacCarthy, and as Laura said, I'm running for the South Carolina State House of Representatives because I see a threat to our democracy and to our society, and I feel strongly called to do so. And I'd like to paraphrase Edmund Burke, who said, figure out if you can figure out which word out of this quote is a paraphrase. Okay. All that is required for evil to triumph over good is for good people to do nothing. I'd like to share with you all a little bit about myself, so you know who I am. First, a little bit of a biography, and followed by a discussion of some of my key values, my core values. My father was a Reagan Republican. Wait for it. Okay. And my mother was a Humphrey and later Elizabeth Warren Democrat. Okay. And given this group and given the point in the calendar in which we are, I'd like to spend just a moment talking about my mother. She was a single mom who started out as a registered nurse and became a professor of psychiatric nursing at the University of Minnesota, and then eventually a practicing Jungian analyst. She taught me that life is a mythic journey. If she were alive today and she could see me starting this part of my journey, especially with this group, I think she'd be very proud of me. And by the way, one of the reasons I feel so comfortable with this group is you all remind me of my. I'm sorry. Maybe that didn't come out right. Anyway, I grew up in a variety of towns in the West and the Midwest. And I went to high school and junior high school in conservative rural communities in Central California and Northeastern Nevada. Now, this background, I think, has given me an understanding and a respect for a variety of perspectives and value systems. Following high school, I graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Physics from Carleton College in Minnesota, followed by a PhD in physics from the University of Notre Dame with a focus in biophysics and biochemistry. My first professional job was as an assistant professor of physics at Muhlenberg College up in Pennsylvania. And when I learned that all of my students were going into engineering, I figured maybe I should go and find out what an engineer does. So I took a job as a systems engineer at one of the leading defense companies in the United States, where I spent 20 years serving my country, developing defense systems and environmental systems of national significance, national importance. I was then invited to take on a role as a senior technical and policy advisor for a high-level Pentagon official, and later as a senior analyst for a Washington area Defense Department think tank. From there, I was recruited by the University of Maryland to serve as to run its graduate program in systems engineering. And upon retiring a few years ago, my wife and I moved here to Greenville, South Carolina, which we love. Okay. And where I was fortunate enough to be hired by Wofford College as a part-time adjunct professor of physics. In my roles as scientist, systems engineer, and technical manager, I've been trained to work cooperatively with diverse groups of people to find cost-effective and practical solutions to complex problems. And I've come to understand the importance of listening to all affected parties to ensure that all of their needs are met in a solution to the extent possible. As a college professor, and more importantly, as a hiring manager, I am fully aware of how critical an excellent public education system is to a healthy state and national economy. Finally, my experience leads me to believe that true patriots, and this is something that I'm annoyed with, that the Republicans are taking that over, okay, that term, that just annoys the dickens out of me. For me, true patriotism consists of seeking to protect our Constitution and democratic institutions, and we do so by finding ways to unite one another and by serving our communities, and not by finding ways to cause distrust that undermine our democracy. Now, let me share a little bit about some of my core values. I was blessed to be raised by parents who taught me that love of God, country, and education were key values, and values that I should cherish. Through my parents and church community, I've developed a deep and abiding faith in God that guides my life. This faith has sustained me through the tragedies of my parents' divorce, my sister's suicide, and the death of both parents. It also fills me with a sense of gratitude for the blessings of a loving wife, two nearly perfect children, an excellent education, and a rewarding career as a teacher, scientist, and engineer. Like many of you, I've raised a family, made a career, and willingly paid my taxes. And like you, I want to make this world a better place. Like you, I believe we are called upon to love and respect other people, to protect the poor and disenfranchised, to act with justice and mercy, and to walk humbly with our God, and not to demonize the vulnerable. Like you, I believe that people are basically good, and we want to do the right thing. But in this complicated and confusing world, we all need help seeing or being reminded of what that is. And that's one of the principal reasons that I attend church and pray. Yes, I think we all have far more in common than what divides us. Let me close with a quote from noted Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel. The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. The opposite of art is not ugliness, it's indifference. The opposite of faith is not heresy, it's indifference. And the opposite of life is not death, it's indifference. I'm John MacCarthy. I choose not to be indifferent. I hope you will find that you're able to support my run for the South Carolina State House, District 27. Working together, we can make this state a better place. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Anybody has any questions for John? His modus operandi seems to be hanging around at the end. So he may be here. If he's not here and you have a question, because we're not having a Q&A, let me know and I will get them over to him, and I'm sure he'd be happy to answer them, and I'll get you some responses. Thank you. Okay, our featured speaker today is Tameika Isaac Devine. Tameika served for 18 years on the Columbia City Council and was the first African-American woman to be elected to that body. In 1920, she looks really good for her age. In 2021, she narrowly lost her bid to become mayor of Columbia. She's a lawyer, a speaker, and consultant. She's also founded the Possibilities Institute, a consulting firm that works with women leaders to help them excel professionally while still maintaining a family-first lifestyle. Tameika's focus has always been on improving communities, and as a coalition builder and problem solver, she knows that to make a difference, you have to roll up your sleeves and get to work. She has built on decades of success and knows the value that women bring to legislating. We are really looking forward to hearing her perspective on women in leadership. Tameika, welcome.
Thank you, Laura. And I want to make sure, okay, for our Zoom world, of course, COVID taught us a lot of things. Some skills we probably didn't want to learn, but some we did. And I kind of know Zoom. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Don't y'all love strong men who don't mind being in a room of a bunch of powerful women? So, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. I enjoyed the drive up here. I was sharing with Laura. I listened to books on tape, so I got a chance. I'm listening to a book called Power for All, which talks about how we can make sure that we build systems and structures that work for everyone. And that power is not a bad thing. It is a good thing when it's in the hands of the right people. And so I want to talk to you about making sure we have more power in the hands of the right people, which of course are more women. All due respect for our strong men who understand supporting strong women. And I do want to say thank you. It was great to drive up here and come in and see some familiar faces and some longtime friends. Senator Allen has been a friend for many years. I've always been a fan of Representative Simpson. And then, of course, I have to say, when we talk about mentors, one of my biggest mentors in my municipal elected, being a mom life has been Lillian Brock Fleming. And thank you, Lillian. It's so great to see you. When I first got elected in 2002, she was one of the first people to pull me aside at a conference and talk to me about service and about making sure that public service, you lead with public service. And that's why I definitely know that we need more women in elected office, because when you think about public service, it is about the public. It is about serving in a way that is not about you. It is about your community. A lot of times people who don't have a voice and cannot always speak for themselves. And so when I think about needing more women in elected office, I'm not talking about women for women's sake. And I had this conversation a little bit earlier because I want one thing for you all to realize. I'm not saying that we should support women candidates over anybody else, no matter what. We need women in office, but we need the right women in office. And so I'm not going to go over the stats because Laura has talked about the stats. Y'all, we're in a critical time right now. We are in a critical time. And so we need elected officials, men and women, who understand this crisis that we're in and are not afraid to stand up and fight for what's right. And so I want to add a couple things. I did this talk a couple of weeks ago and it came off so well. I was like, oh, let me just recycle this for these women. Because you guys know, I don't have to go through the history and the data and why it's important for women, because you guys know that. So I'm just going to get to the real nuts and bolts about why, if any of you in here are thinking about getting involved in politics, why is now the time, and what are the ways that you can get involved? Because we talk about getting more women elected in office, but I'm be honest, we also need women, like Laura said, who help fund candidates in office. We need women to serve as campaign managers and other things. We need women in all areas. We need women in the offices, because, you know, a lot of times these folks, again, Carl, close your ears. A lot of these times, these men aren't running their own offices. They got other people running their offices. And sometimes they're 17, 18, 19-year-olds. If you call a congressional office, you're going to get a 20-something-year-old whose father knew somebody and put them in there, but they are running things. And so how do we get more people, more women in these offices? So a couple of things I want you guys to consider when you're thinking about running for office. Number one, think about where your passion is, whether it is gun violence and making sure we have gun census candidates, whether it is reproductive justice, and we want to have people who understand that it is education, which we know that is under attack. Whatever it is that your passion is, think about your passion, and then think about where is the best place for you to serve. I cannot tell you how many folks who come to me and say, hey, Tameika, I'm running for office. Can you talk to me? And they tell me they're running for a seat. And then they tell me what they're passionate about. And I'm like, okay, do you understand what that seat you're running for actually does? A lot of folks will just run for office because they want to be elected. They feel like this is an open seat and they go after it. And it's not necessarily the best place to get things done. So it is important as us, especially us as Democratic women, when people are getting out there and they're thinking about running for office, we need to recruit people for the right seats. We need to make sure that we're focusing on school boards, because y'all, we know school boards are under attack. And that is where there's a lot of progress being made by the other side. So we need to be getting people who understand what school boards do. If they want to change legislation, no, they need to be going to the state house. But if they want to affect policy, if they want to address school safety, then school board is a great place for them to be. City and county council. City councils and county councils, guess what, y'all? We do different things. I mean, I get people who say they're going to run for city council. And first of all, sometimes they don't even live in the city. I don't know if y'all ever had that. So like, you might need to move if you're going to run for that. But when they decide to run for city council, they're like, oh, because I want to do this budget for the sheriff's department. Well, hello, the city's not over the sheriff's department budget. So we need candidates who understand what they're running for. And it doesn't mean people can't run, but before someone gets out there, they need to educate themselves about what they're running for and be able to actually speak about what change they want to do. We also need to figure out, make sure that we are training our elected officials and our candidates. And I mentioned before about what some folks on the other side is doing. There's a lot of things happening, but training is one place where we are excelling. Yeah. So if there's anybody in this room who's thinking about running for office, there is Emerge SC. Anybody ever heard of Emerge SC? Okay. I mean, we're a great state. Emerge is not everywhere. So you've got Emerge, you've got South Carolina Women in Leadership that does training. I can put Laura, seems like she's on top of things, and she has an agenda. So I'm gonna put on her agenda. Training here can be, making sure that we're training candidates, because deciding you want to run is one thing, but knowing how to run a campaign is something else. And I will tell you, sisters, it's not for the faint of heart. So if somebody's saying something about you is going to hurt your feelings, maybe running for office is not the best place for you. But you could help volunteer on a campaign or help raise money. But it's not for the faint of heart. But it doesn't mean that you can't build that muscle, because we know that we're passionate, we're dedicated, and we can be out there, but we need to make sure that we're trained on how to run a campaign, how to connect with folks. Social media, I'm maybe a little bit younger than a few people in here, probably a little bit older than a few people in here, But I'm gonna tell you, even me, social media was something I had to actually learn to like. I don't like social media, but Lillian can tell you I'm on there all the time on her. Because I had to learn to like it because that is where the young folks were. And if I was going to connect with young voters, I had to be where they were. And so if you don't like social media, then hire somebody who understands social media. Your kids and your grandkids, you give them $20 and say, hey, put together a reel, they will love it. And it teaches them also about politics. I mean, all my kids have been raised. So, and I'm gonna go back to the Mother's Day theme, but when I first got elected, I was single, no kids. And one of the things that Lillian talked to me about when I was pregnant with my first one was about taking time for myself and taking time for my babies. My oldest is now 17 years old, about to graduate high school. So they have only known mommy as an elected official. But guess what? They can tell you any and everything about politics and about public service and about grassroots organizing. And those are the babies that are going to save our world. So that is one of the things. Get your grandkids involved in your campaigns, because that will be great. And then the other thing, I want to make sure I'm staying on time. A couple of the real things I want to tell you about when you're thinking about running for office, and again, why we need more women. We need people who understand about what it takes to actually run. When you decide to run, you have to build a team, which means you have to think about if you want paid staff, or you're going to have to start with volunteers. If you're running for school board or city council, you can't really afford a whole lot of paid staff. But if you're going to run for Senate or you're running for Congress, you're going to have to raise money to pay staff. So you got to understand, you've got to think about your team, your consultants, your grassroots organizing, your social media. I talked about that, but fundraising. Fundraising is key. And Laura mentioned that I narrowly lost. I don't like to use the word lost. I narrowly escaped at my last election, y'all. The margin difference in a runoff was 794 votes. Okay. In the runoff, because I had spent so much money and I had done a really good job, I raised almost $500,000. I had raised and spent so much money in the general. By the time the runoff happened, which was 2 weeks, I did not have the money to compete on the level of my opponent. But my opponent was on TV every day, all day, and I didn't have the money to do that. And so on election day, I was out knocking doors and people were like, well, I already voted for you. And I was like, oh, this week? No, like 3 weeks ago. No, there's a runoff. And literally, if I had the money to connect with voters during that runoff, I'd be the mayor of Columbia right now. And so money is critical. And I know sometimes we don't like to raise money, but I tell you, if your grandkids were selling those little nasty candies or something, wouldn't y'all be buying them and telling your friends to buy them? The same thing. When you have great women who are coming in here and saying, hey, I have a great message, I have passion for this community, I need money to connect with my voters, we need to be able to help them get elected. So fundraising is critically important, and we need to make sure people understand how important it is to raise money and to support good candidates. People, for some reason, they don't understand why I need to write a check. I'm gonna tell you, for anybody in here who ran for office or known somebody to run for office, y'all know the little signs that everybody wants to put in their yard? Mm-hmm. Those cost money. Okay. And then guess what? After I spent a Saturday and Sunday with my cute little kids out there putting signs up, by Tuesday, somebody has gone through and picked them up. It happens to you? Yeah. It's a game. People love to steal signs. I don't know why, but they love to steal signs. So then I have to spend more money to replace those signs. So it is important that we actually support our candidates. And then the last couple of things I want to say, campaigning, got to make sure that campaigns have great messages. John, y'all know what his points were. You understood campaigns have to have good messaging. As candidates, you have to understand your message. You have to understand your time commitment, which means you're going to have to be out there. I mentioned before, you have to have thick skin, and you always have to remember your why. And that's the last thing I'll lead with. When we talk about Mother's Day and honoring our mothers, our mother figures, our mentors, we spend our lives giving of ourselves for our community, for our children, our grandchildren, our communities, to make sure that we're leaving this world in a better place. Well, I started off, I talked about us being in crisis, y'all. We know now that most people would agree that when you look at the world in 2023, it is not in a better place than it was before. We have had lots of things that have happened in the last several years that have changed. I have a 17-year-old that's about to go away for college, and I used to say, "Oh, I can't wait for her to come back." And now, y'all, I'm scared for her to potentially come back to South Carolina. And that frightens me to say that as someone who is a South Carolinian all my life, and I want my kids to be here. So instead of me saying, well, I don't want her to come back because I know South Carolina is not going to be kind to her, I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and fight for the South Carolina that she and other kids deserve. All of us. But I know I'm not the only one in this room who feels that way. I know y'all feel that way as well. And so we have to realize that sometimes that means getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. We need to be at the state house, and we need to be running for state houses, and we need to be running campaigns, and we need to be raising money, and we need to do everything we can to change the world that our children, our grandchildren will come back to, so that my kids and your kids and grandkids come back to South Carolina and can be proud of this state. And so that was my little, did I stay within my 15 minutes, Laura? I know I talk fast.
20.
Okay, well, if I have 20, let me just say one last thing. One last thing, because this is the thing that gets me too. And I said all this about, running for office. And I hope that I've inspired somebody who was kind of thinking about it and say, well, Tameika said this, I'm gonna consider running for office. But I also wanted to tell you, running for office and getting elected is one thing. Serving is totally different. And I need to make sure that people understand what it takes to serve. I served for nearly 20 years on city council, would not change it for the world. I mentioned that I raised all my kids knew before 2021, all they ever knew was mom official. And I'll tell you, they probably will argue with you. I'll know I'm no longer elected. I'm probably busier now than I was then. So I'm still not home as much, but I will say that there are things that you have to do to run. To serve. If you run and you get elected, you've got to remember why you ran. You got to remember the commitment and the time that it takes. You got to read homework. You got to know the issues. You got to talk to constituents. Don't be one of those elected officials who only come around election time. But make sure that you are in the community, that you remain in the community, that you keep your pulse on the community so that you know who you're fighting for every single day. And I think that so many times we focus so much on running for office that we don't talk to people about what it really takes to serve. There were lots of things that I wish I could have done, or I wish I should, or I'd say I should have done, that because I was serving, I couldn't do. But I'm also a firm believer that God makes no mistakes. And so I was where I needed to be when I needed to be there. And now that I've got this break, I'm open to do other things. But just know that if you do get elected and serve, and you've got these amazing women in this room supporting you, don't disappoint us. Understand that service is about heart, it's about sacrifice, it's about passion. And again, it's about being bold. Sometimes you will be the only single person standing up there fighting for something, and that's okay. But if you're fighting for the right reasons, then it's all worth it. And then the last thing I'll just say, I'm so proud of our women senators. And I think they're an example. They are an example to all of us about when you have good women, we figure out a way to get it done. It's not always about being Republican, Democrat, Black, or white. It's about what's right. And it's about getting stuff done. And that should be all of our example as to why we need more women on every single level of government. So I hope that you guys consider running. I have, Laura has my contact information, but like I said, I'm on social media. So if you want to find me, Tameika Isaac Devine on everything, call me, email me. I'd love to talk to you about what it takes to run, and I'm happy to support. And I hope there are some women in here that I'll be writing checks for. Probably not big checks, but I'll be writing checks. I'll write some checks for when you run.
There's a little something for you, for us.
Thank you so much.
And if we have a minute. And any questions? Anybody have any questions for Tameika?
Any questions?
Wow. Down with that.
I'll pray on that. I do plan to run for I do plan to run for mayor again in 2025. So I say that this is the break. This is the break that God knew I needed, and it's given me a better time to do a lot of things I want to do. It's also given me another perspective about actually what attacks we're under. And I'm really trying to work. We were talking before, I'm a member of Moms Demand Action. I'm a member of REN, and I'm working really hard throughout the state. So please support any and everything to get more women elected.
We just have to make sure we get her some more media money.
Any other questions? Okay, I think.
That was wonderful. Thank you. Okay, I want to take a moment now that we've heard from Tameika. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the elected representatives in the room today. We have Senator Carl Allen, or we used to have Senator Carl Allen. Okay, well, we had him briefly. We have former Representative Leola Robinson Simpson. We have Councilwoman Dorothy Dow. We have Councilwoman Lillian Brock Fleming. And we have candidate, not yet elected, but soon to be, Michelle Shane, sorry. Okay, so I am on track to actually make this on time today. I'm so excited. But I do have a couple of things, last minute things. A couple of months ago, we put forward Jean LaPere's name to the South Carolina Democratic Women's Council to fill the seat for CD4. Since then, we have found out that Jean doesn't actually live in CD4. She lives in this little tiny part that's CD3. So Jean is moving over and will represent CD3, leaving us with a seat to fill. So if anyone is interested in representing Democratic women and you live in CD4, let me know. You can talk to Jean. I'll make her email address available. That's all right, right? Yeah. So you can contact her if you want to find out what that's all about, what it's going to entail. And I'd appreciate anybody stepping forward who might be interested. I also want to take a minute to thank, you guys saw the pictures on the slideshow. We participated in Hands on Greenville yesterday. It would not have happened without the efforts of Jen Boffey, our outreach chair. We had, I think, 22 people sign up and participate, and that was really, really great. I felt like we assembled hygiene kits that will be given out to Title I schools, and I feel like we did something good. We helped the community. We had a little fun and had some visibility. Showed the flag. So that was a great effort. I also want to thank Evelyn Nocella, where is she back there, who is spearheading our efforts to launch the squad, giving help, hands-on, roll up your sleeves kind of help, to Tameika's point, to our candidates. So we did some, we're helping out with Dorothy Dow's event next week. We're helping out with Michelle Shane's event. We wrote some postcards for Dorothy, I believe. So we're rolling up our sleeves. We're gonna need more people, I can tell, as things pick up. So on your tables, the red cards, have a QR code where you can sign up to be part of a committee, to have a role in helping the organization and particularly working with our candidates and stuff like that. So we definitely need you. Please sign up there. That would be a big help. Programs needs people, also communications definitely needs some people, especially if you like to do social media. Love to hear, and Lucille would love to hear from you. So this is the last week of the legislative session. Thank God. On the slideshow, you may have seen that there is a call from Ren for advocates to sign up to help organize and to pack the room for crucial votes that are coming up. I'm going to send out in my normal post-event thing, email, the link to sign up for that. But I think it's pretty simple. It's bit.ly, bit.ly, because I shortened it for them, /Ren, all caps, -volunteers. But I'm going to send it out so that everybody has a chance, because it's just tomorrow and Wednesday, and with a little bit of luck, they'll be done for the year on Thursday. I also want to mention the library. The next library board meeting is May 22nd at noon. But I really want you to think a little bit forward. Coming up in July will be applications for county boards and commissions, one of which is the library board, where they have 6 openings. Now, I don't know, they're by district, so I don't know where everybody lives, but I'm also putting in my email the link to the county boards and commissions website, so you can go out and look and see if you're in a district where there's going to be an opening. Getting on the library board may be a tough go. But we gotta try. Maybe if we flood them with applications, somebody will sneak through. We really gotta work from the inside out there, because that's the only way we have to have a seat at the table. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming. I appreciate everybody who was here and everybody who contributed. And want to point out that it is 1:15, and we will see you next month.